So Sag-Aftra, the guild that represents over 100,000 actors, is apparently looking to go on strike against the gaming industry. What games could be affected, and should you be worried? Let's talk about it. What's going on, guys? That guy right here, your friendly neighborhood creator, here to talk to you all about gaming, anime, TV, movies, you name it. Anything pop culture, we're talking about it. And today, I really want to talk about this topic that has been absolutely buzzing all over social media. And that is basically due to the announcement that SAG-Aftra is preparing for a potential strike on the video game industry. And a lot of people have had questions. I think there's been some confusion as to people not really being sure or, certain as to whether or not SAG even represents actors. And so I want to talk all about that, what that potentially means. This article by Comic Book really highlights it very well. So we're going to read through this article together. And in between, I'll stop and give you my feedback, give you my takes, and my opinions, things like that. And we'll have a discussion about it. So if you guys do enjoy this content, you like the news related kind of open discussion type videos that I think I'm going to start doing a little bit more of, let me know in the comment section. Any feedback you can provide would be greatly appreciated. I really want to know if these are videos you want to see in the future, or if they're videos that you think could, become a long-standing series on the channel. Let me know in the comments. Drop a like if you do enjoy. Without further ado, let's get into it. So let me see. Let me just pull this here. Let's enhance it a little bit. That's probably as good as it. Hopefully you guys can see this. I may take some screenshots and post them on the video just so we can figure this out. We're figuring this out together. So I apologize if it is a little bit, if it seems a little bit butchered, but here we go. So SAG-Aftra preparing for a video game strike against the video game industry. Why is that? Well, it's pretty obvious. Actors not only work in Hollywood, they don't just work in movies, they don't just work in TV, they also work in games. We've seen this in motion capture artists, we've seen this in voiceovers. Pretty much I would say every voice line that you see in a video game, whether it be from an NPC or a major character, comes from a voice actor that is trained in that has experience in that. And so all of those people that you interact with in a video game, they're all represented by real people, right? So at least to my knowledge. And so all of these actors are represented under SAG. SAG works to protect these actors, to make sure that they're getting, the fair amount of pay, to make sure that they're getting represented well, to make sure they're getting treated well, right? And so SAG really works to become kind of like a barrier to protect all of these actors. And basically they're going on strike because that isn't happening. And so we're going to get into the article. So it says SAG-Aftra, the guild that hundreds of thousands of actors belong to, including major movie and TV stars, is preparing for a potential video game strike. Earlier this year, the Writers Guild of America went on strike after being unable to negotiate terms for better pay and conditions with studios. The writers have been on strike since the start of May, and as of right now, it looks totally unclear as to when the strike may be resolved. Yeah, guys, I mean, obviously, I'm sure many of you probably already know this, some of you might not, but there has been a strike going on for, it feels like a long time, right? And it has been the result of a number of TV, movie delays, many of which some of these shows have even just gotten straight up canceled. And so obviously this strike has been going on, but it's for good reason, right? Writers, actors, they are not being paid fairly. Studios are receiving far more than they should based on, and this is all built on the backs of creators, actors, writers, like people who actually created the product. They created the stuff and they put their talent and their backbone behind it, and they're not being paid fairly. And so I think they've kind of said enough is enough. And until we strike a deal that works well for all the people who are contributing, we're not doing anything for you. We're not working for you. So for anybody that's saying, why do the actors go on strike? They're rich and they're famous. It's such a delusional thing. No, that is a wildly, I would say, ignorant and misunderstood understanding as to who actors are. Not all actors are the Brad Pitts and Angelina Jolies and all these big names. I can't even think of any. Bradley Coopers and all the big names, right? The Rock, right? Those are just a very small, I would say those are like 1% representation of what actors are. There's a lot of actors that work on those films, that have worked on many films, that don't get paid nearly enough to pay their rent. So, I think that we got to stop this whole idea that actors are just, everybody that's an actor is just rich, because that is far from the truth. So continuing on, right, in July, SAG-Aftra authorized a strike against major Hollywood studios, putting a stop to massive film and TV productions such as Deadpool 3, which has been, I think, delayed indefinitely. I don't know. It's been delayed for sure. However, some expectations have been granted for studios that aren't being struck. It continues on by saying, with that said, it looks like video game industry could be next. SAG-Aftra's board has voted unanimously to send out strike authorizations from its members for the video game industry. And obviously this is for many of the same reasons: unfair pay, not ideal working conditions. And I guess the studios behind who, make these decisions said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to pay them more. I think they're paid enough. And SAG is like, nah, that's like, you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry and you can't fork over a better deal, right? So we'll get into the details of that deal in a minute. So the article continues on by saying they voted unanimously for a strike. This means members who vote on whether they would want to strike or not should negotiations with the video game industry fall through. So notable companies that have been struck, that would be struck, include Insomniac Games, right? That's currently working on, the finishing touches for Spider-Man 2, which releases next month. They're also currently working on the next big Marvel game, which I would say is Wolverine. And apparently they're working on I think they're working on a third game as well, a third unannounced title, which I don't know. I have no idea what that could be. I would hope it's another Ratchet and Clank, but I guess we'll have to see, right? It also includes Warner Brothers, Disney, Activision, right? Which, Call of Duty, EA, Epic Games, and Take-Two Interactive, Rockstar's parent company. So that would obviously include GTA 6. Now I know people are going to be absolutely fuming if they get confirmation that if a strike does happen and they end up having to push GTA 6 back. Oh, I don't even want to see what that world looks like. That GTA fans are toxic. Sorry, y'all. So then it says SAG-Aftra is seeking better wages, protections against AI, and better working conditions such as vocal stress protections for those in the gaming industry. Negotiations with the aforementioned companies will start on September 26th. So the chance of the gaming industry will start to become more of a possibility by the end of the month. So if they're not able to come up with a deal and strike an agreement that is beneficial for obviously members of SAG and obviously something that the industry itself can agree with, yeah, you can expect potentially by the end of this month, they look to say, okay, we're striking. And that would, obviously we'll get into what that would do, but it would do a lot. It would really impact the industry potentially for future and ongoing games that require voiceovers and things. Look at all the seasonal model games that exist, the live service games like Fortnite, Destiny, right? All these games that potentially have not had, voice lines created for big expansions or big updates and things like that. Yeah, those that you could potentially see delays, but there may be workarounds. We'll speculate that as well. So, the article then continues on and says, here we go again. Now our interactive agreement is at a stalemate too. Once again, we are facing employer greed and disrespect. Once again, artificial intelligence is putting our members in jeopardy of reducing their opportunity to work. And once again, SAG-Aftra is standing up to tyranny on behalf of its members, said SAG-Aftra Fran Drescher. Look, I gotta say, unrelated, but kind of related. Fran Drescher, like, absolute legend. The way that I think she's going about representing SAG members and really pushing for better pay and better working conditions. I think that this is something that has been in the workings and been in the making and building up for years now. And so to finally stand up and say, no, we're not just going to stand by and allow you to just soak up your greed and take all the money and take all the benefits and the compensation based on the hard work of other people. And then they just have to live in this situation where they can't afford their homes and can't afford their apartments and things like that. And it's just like a job for any job. I mean, you're seeing with pilots now too, right? I mean, before you know it, teachers potentially could go on strike. I mean, I think teachers are wildly underpaid. And so I think you're seeing a movement happen right now where people are standing up and fighting for what they know is right and not just standing by and saying, oh, well, it's just corporate America. You just take it for what it is and you just move on. No, absolutely not. They say, no, Like, you either come to a fair deal because you're making big money, right? The big studios are making big money. And so why are the voice actors and the actors involved in these TV, movies, and games not being fairly compensated for that work, especially when you consider how many copies some of these games sell, how many tickets, and how much money at the box office some of these movies make, right? How many streams some of these TV shows get. When you think about all of that, right, they're not being compensated for that. They get a check, and it's not being shown in residuals, especially, you know, when we're talking about TV and movies, right? And so I think if you are a part of a project and you put a lot of work into it, and that project ends up being very successful, even more than expectations and what they could have predicted, I think, yeah, you should get a piece of that pie, and that's not happening. So hence why a strike is occurring, or potentially occurring. So it finishes up by saying that the disease of greed is spreading like wildfire, ready to burn workers out of their livelihoods and humans out of their usefulness. We at Sag-Aftra say no, not on our watch. So then obviously there's another quote here. The threat is real. The threat of AI is very real. And really, I think what it all comes down to is companies wanting to try to find ways to continue to save money, and not really save money for any other reason than to pocket it themselves. I mean, that's the real, I think that's a major motivating factor. Hey, if we can just use AI to replicate voices and do all this stuff, why wouldn't we do that? Right. So it has become and continues to be quite an issue. And so, yeah, I think it's great that SAG is stepping up for voice actors. I have always been an advocate for the work that actors and writers do to create some of these worlds and these characters that we enjoy. And especially when it comes to video games, all the work that, you know, motion capture artists and voice actors do, dozens and dozens of lines, hours of work, and not being compensated fairly for that is kind of messed up. Anyway, that's my soapbox. So it continues on by saying video games that could be implicated by SAG-Aftra. Obviously, we know that Take-Two, which would include Grand Theft Auto 6, Motive's Iron Man game, which I think is kind of an early development at, you know, EA. It was announced an EA project not too long, a couple months ago, I think. And so this is supposed to be like an open world Iron Man game. So that would definitely see a delay if a strike were to happen. When strikes happen, man, I mean, keep in mind, guys, these things don't just resolve next week, right? They can last up to 100 days. Really, I think it really just comes down to a lot of studios end up trying to play the long game, right? Because they're like, we have all the money, we have all the power, and so they're gonna need a job at some point, right? So they'll eventually crawl back to us, begging us for their work, for their jobs, and it's like when you push for a strike, like it really is all or nothing. You know what I mean? Like there is no going back to work and just keeping it how it is. No, I think they're going to keep it going as long as they can. And I think studios will have to cave because they realize, and they've always realized, that they're nothing without the people that create the things that they make the money on. You know what I mean? So it also includes Call of Duty Activision, which comes out every year. You know my soapbox on that. Wonder Woman, which I actually kind of forgot about. I haven't heard anything about Wonder Woman ever since that little teaser that dropped. And then of course Marvel's Wolverine and many others. So keep in mind, many others, these are just some of the major studios that would be impacted, but you have to keep in mind that there are a lot of other studios. Pretty much the entire gaming industry would come to a halt. Games that are, like I said, utilizing motion capture, utilizing actors, voice actors as a part of the creation and the development of some of these games, they will all take a hit. So you will see the gaming industry basically come to a halt. And this isn't something that you may see the implications of and the impact of off the jump, because the time frame for game development is wildly different, or somewhat different, I would say, than TV and movies. And so I think you wouldn't really see the impact of that potentially for a year or two, maybe, because I think games that are coming out within the next 6 months or a year are pretty much done. So I wouldn't see too many of those games get impacted. However, it's still a possibility. So I said this in a TikTok I did. Marvel Spider-Man 2 likely wouldn't be affected because I was getting a lot of questions about whether or not this would, delay Spider-Man 2. I don't see that being possible, and it's confirmed here. The comic book doesn't think it's possible either because Spider-Man's coming out next month. It's right around the corner. I don't think, even if a strike were to happen at the end of the month, I don't think that would impact the release of Spider-Man 2, like in the slightest. Now, when was the last time the video game industry had a strike? So it looks like in October 2026, a strike against 11 video game publishers and developers, including some of the ones we've already mentioned, was initiated. It lasted 340 days and was the longest strike in the history of SAG-Aftra. 340 days, guys, that's almost a year, right? Yeah, that's almost a year That's insane. The union asked for residuals for video game projects, but the studios pushed back against the request as they deemed it trivializing the work of the developers themselves. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I could see that. Although they eventually came to a conclusion, they were not able to secure the residuals, but instead got the studios to agree to a sliding pay scale and a variety of other changes on how projects are disclosed to actors auditioning for a role. The strike didn't appear to cause any delays in projects, but Life is Strange Before the Storm did replace actress Ashley Birch in the role of Chloe for its first episode. So it's crazy to think that it lasted for 340 days and it didn't really impact the gaming industry. Like I said, that just goes to show how much, how much is different between game development, like TVs and movies, right? I think TV and movies really, unless it's like animated, even then, I feel like it really relies on people, voice actor, actors, voice actors for animated things. But I think a lot of development can still occur when it comes to creating a game, even if you have to delay voice acting and stuff like that. I'm sure they'd have to shuffle some things around, but you could obviously, like, there's still developers still working on the game, even if there is a strike against, from SAG for voice actors. I don't know if that would completely shut down game development. You know what I mean? Because I feel like they're slightly different. And so, yeah, guys, that's the article. Now, my thoughts on this, I'm fully in support of a strike that better, supports, the talent that works on these games. I mean, I'm still beaming off of, Christopher Judge's performance in God of War Ragnarok, and everybody that was involved in that game is some of the best voice acting, some of the best emotional portrayal that I have seen in a game in a long time. And I think that's going to be even more pushed. Those boundaries are going to be pushed even more when we look at something like Spider-Man 2, which I think, based on the trailers, also looks to be conveying a great deal of emotion. All of those people, as far as I know, are real actors performing those roles. And so, yeah, I do think they deserve a better piece of the pie, better working conditions, whatever, because I mean, these games and these characters that we talk about, there's real people behind them. There's real people with families, real people with worries, with troubles, right? And, like I said before at the beginning of the video, we have to get off of this idea that actors are all just rich and completely delusional to us normals. Like, a lot of actors are normal people just trying to make a living. It is a job just like any other one, even though you see them on TV, and I think we glorify it more than we should. This idea that, like, oh, they're in this movie, they're in this show, they're like untouchable, they're immortal. No, they still go to doctor's offices, they still have to poop, I mean, they still have to do all of these things that we do. So I like I said, I've done my research, and I think it's, last time I did my research on this topic, it was about 60% of actors make like less than like 40,000 or something. Like the average mean was like 50,000, which is like as much as anybody makes, you know what I mean? So that's my soapbox. Obviously, I've made so many videos about like the realities of actors and how much they actually make, at least a majority of them, right? Not the 1%. But yeah, I'm in full support of this. I hope that obviously they can come to a deal before the end of the month. I hope that a strike doesn't occur, but hey, if it has to happen, it has to happen. But I just want to make this video to let you guys know, have an open discussion about it. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Do you think that a strike on the video game industry, what do you think that could potentially do? Are you sad about GTA 6 potentially getting a delay? I don't know. I can't really speak on it. I don't want to say that like, oh, GTA 6 won't get delayed. And even if it does get delayed, I can't say it's fully the responsibility of the SAG strike. If a SAG strike does happen, I feel like GTA is one of those games that will get delayed regardless. Like when they finally announce it, whatever the date is, which they'll probably just give a tentative year, right? 2024, 2025 or whatever. I still think that game will get pushed back. It's probably going to be one of the most massive games Rockstar's ever done. Obviously, there's a slew of bugs that they potentially have to work through. Either way, that game's getting delayed. Okay, stamping it right now. We can refer back to this video in many months when it inevitably does get delayed on its own accord. But yeah, that's obviously a different topic for a different time. As for now, guys, yeah, it looks like a strike is potentially on the horizon. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? What games do you think will be impacted? Is there a game on the list that we already talked about that you're worried about getting delayed? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like on this video, and also let me know if you did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy this content, please let me know what you enjoyed about it. I want to know if this is something we should continue doing. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is That Guy Rye, and I will see you in the next video.